When it comes down to high intensity interval training, every single second and every little percentage makes a huge difference. So what I want to do in this video is I want to give you 4 drastic ways to improve your HIIT training. Ways that are going to absolutely change how your body responds to HIIT, but also change how your mind looks at HIIT. Hey, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to this channel. New videos every Tuesday, Friday, and Sunday at 7 a.m. Pacific time, and hit that little bell icon to turn on notifications. All right, so where do we begin? Well, first off, let's start with probably the most important thing, doing HIIT properly and following the proper ratio. What I mean by this is so many people out there do high intensity interval training with the wrong ratio. They focus on like a 1-to-1 ratio, meaning they'll do like 30 seconds of exercise and 30 seconds of recovery. But here's what we have to remember. With HIIT, to have it be effective, you have to be focusing on the anaerobic system. That means that you need to be pushing it to your absolute max to tap into that energy system. What that means is that that 30 seconds activity needs to be as close to 100% of your max intensity as possible, to the point where at 31 seconds, you'd ultimately collapse. Now, here's the thing. 30 seconds of rest is not going to give you enough recovery to do that again and again and again. So a 1-to-1 ratio, 30 seconds intensity and 30 seconds off, just isn't going to cut it. You need a longer rest. So you need more like a 1-to-2, but realistically, more preferably a 1-to-3 or 1-to-4 ratio of activity to recovery. So we're talking like 30 seconds of activity followed by 2, maybe even 2.5 minutes of recovery, whatever allows you to get the maximum effort during your interval. That's where the magic happens, is during the time that you're sprinting, during the high intensity portion, not during the recovery. If you're keeping your heart rate elevated the whole time and not letting yourself recover, you're not even doing intervals. You're just doing high intensity training and keeping your heart rate up all the time, and that's using more of the aerobic system than anything else. That is how you lose muscle, not how you burn fat. Number 2, do it fasted. You can do high intensity interval training fasted. Let me first and foremost completely tell you that there is a lot of science now that is proving that you're not going to burn muscle if you train in a fasted state. Whether it's weight training or high intensity interval training, you can just forget that and save the energy for something else. But what we do have to remember is that if you're doing high intensity interval training right, like I mentioned in the first tip, then all of this is going to apply in a fasted state. You're going to be able to burn a lot more fat and preserve your muscle. You see, what ends up happening is we use glycogen, which is our stored energy in our muscles, a lot of times when we're doing HIIT. Now, the cool thing is you have glycogen in your muscles whether you're fasted or not. So whether you just ate a pizza full of carbohydrates or whether you haven't eaten in 10 hours, you still have carbohydrates that are stored in your muscles that are ready for action when you do HIIT. So don't ever think that you need to eat to be able to have the energy to do your high intensity interval training. But I want you to look at something interesting. You see, if we actually look at the numbers with what happens when it comes to calories when we're working out and doing activity, it's pretty interesting. If you're at 50% of your max heart rate for 30 minutes, you're going to burn approximately 200 calories. Approximately 120 of those calories are going to come from fat, and approximately 80 calories are going to come from carbohydrates. If you're training at 75% max intensity for 30 minutes, you're going to burn 400 calories, and you're going to have approximately 140 coming from fat and 260 coming from carbs. So you're burning more carbs at a higher intensity, but you're also burning more fat. So let's not get twisted up in the whole LISS versus HIIT game here. At the end of the day, HIIT is burning way more calories, plain and simple. So we can totally just talk about thermodynamics here and say that HIIT is ultimately going to burn more fat just by way of calories in, calories out. But that's not enough. I want to talk about intramyocellular fats, okay? One study that was published in the Journal of Physiology found that if you train in a fasted state, you recruit what are called intramyocellular lipids, fat molecules that are inside our muscles, and you recruit them into the bloodstream to ultimately get burned. So this study took a look at those that trained fasted and those that had food before a workout. They found that those that trained fasted ended up reducing the amount of fat that sits inside their muscles from 18% to 6%. Yeah, we're talking 2/3 of the overall fat that is sitting in the muscle gone. That's powerful, and all in a fasted state. All right, the next one is something that you can consume. I talk about algae all the time. Spirulina is one of the most powerful things that you can consume when it comes down to improving your ability to do HIIT. And it all has to do with the fact that algae is grown through photosynthesis, but also is highly oxygenated. So when you consume algae forms like this, your body has the ability to harness the energy in a very, very easy way. In fact, there's one study that was really, really fascinating. This study was published in the Journal of Medicine, Science, and Sports Exercise, and it took a look at participants that were either given a placebo or were given spirulina. Okay, and they had them go ahead and do exercise at 70 to 75% of their VO2 max, and also at 95% of their VO2 max. At the end of just 4 weeks, they found that the group that ended up taking spirulina had a massive increase in their time to fatigue. We're talking 3 minutes, close to 3 minutes of an improvement on their time to fatigue. They could go for that much longer compared to the other group. But it didn't stop there. They found that the spirulina group was able to decrease their carb oxidation, meaning they were able to decrease their dependability on carbs for fuel, and were able to increase the fat oxidation by almost 11%. So they were able to increase the amount of fat that they burned while also improving their performance. Do the math. Better performance plus fat loss at the same time. Now, when you consume spirulina, if you get it in a true raw form, like actually in its algae state, you can harness all the power of this. Now, you've seen my videos before where I partner up with SB2. Now, SB2 is a company that is the only one out there that can take spirulina and have it in a true food form. They grow it in Israel in this completely hermetically sealed environment where they can harvest the algae without any additional pollutants or any additional factors so that they can truly get the powerful effects of spirulina that can make you better at HIIT without all the garbage and nonsense and the variables. So SB2 is pretty darn amazing. I've partnered up with them on a lot of different things and I'm helping them out with a lot of research. You can find them down in the description below and you can learn a little bit more about the research that we're doing, but also how spirulina can make a huge, huge impact on your overall performance. So please make sure you check them out in the description. Oh, and one other thing, normally if you're consuming straight up spirulina, you're gonna find that you can barely gag it down. It's that awful. But when you look at a truly pure spirulina, it doesn't have that taste. The problem is, you can hardly ever find true, pure algae that isn't completely infiltrated with garbage from the environment. Okay, next up, let's talk about plyometrics. Now, plyometrics were huge in the 1990s and early 2000s, but somewhere along the way, they seem to just get less popular. Well, here's the thing. Plyometrics are really, really awesome when it comes down to improving the effectiveness of your HIIT. And let me explain why. Your muscle has this recoil strength, right? It has the ability to sort of expand and contract really, really fast. If we can increase the contractile strength in an explosive way, we can increase our ability to get our heart rate up during our actual intervals. This is a very, very powerful thing, something we want to take advantage of. But don't take my word for it. Here's an awesome study. This study was published in the Journal of Applied Physiology of Nutrition and Metabolism. It took a look at 2 different groups, well really 3 if you count the control. It looked at a high intensity interval training only group, then it looked at a plyometric plus high intensity interval training group, and then a control group which did no exercise. Obviously the group that did no exercise didn't have results, so let's not even factor them in. So when we look at HIIT versus plyo plus HIIT, the results are pretty interesting. What they found is that both groups ended up having biochemical and fitness changes. Okay? They ended up improving themselves from a fitness standpoint. That's kind of a given. But what they did find is that the plyometric plus HIIT group ended up having a 3% increase in lean body mass. What does that mean? That means that the plyo plus HIIT group built muscle. Now remember, we're not talking about weight training here. We're talking about high intensity interval training plus some plyometrics. And they actually built more muscle. But then they also found there was an 11% decrease in plasma glucose and a 24% decrease in overall leptin levels, proving that they were burning fat and keeping insulin even lower. And then additionally, they found that there was an improvement in what is called the leptin to adenopectin ratio. What this means is that the body was utilizing hormones to burn fat, but the ratio of how many of those hormones were being used to how much fat was actually being burned was astronomical. A 41% reduction in that ratio. So that means that adding plyometrics to your HIIT just now and then can improve your body's ability to utilize fat by way of hormones during your HIIT sessions. And last but not least, there was a pretty awesome 24% increase in jump squat. That's just kind of fun. So there you have it. 4 science-backed, legit ways to improve your HIIT. No nonsense, no bro science, just the real stuff backed by science so that you can start doing it right and stop wasting your time. I'll see you in the next video.